beat-driven, iconic performer with an atmospheric cocktail of sexy, indie riff rock, gospel, soul and electronica, and performed on the roof of Optus Stadium for the AFL Grand Final last year. Please welcome to the stage Abbe May.
Prolific snorter too.
And cat lover. Such a talented panel. I'll kick things off by just a quick question down the line of how long you've actually been writing songs, because some people start when they're really, really tiny, others come to it at a later time. So we'll run down the aisle, and then for the other questions that follow, you can just jump in whenever you like. So how long have you been composing? I think you said since you were 14, roughly?
I got into recording at 14, but I remember writing songs as young as 7 years old. At the time I was listening to nursery rhymes, and so I started to write my own nursery rhymes, and so it kind of kicked off from there, really.
Awesome. Do you have any of those recorded?
No. We started recording on little cassette tapes, but, you know, they're gone, long gone now.
Oh. Very cute.
2024 kids album.
Yeah.
I've been writing songs probably since I was about 19, 20, I think. Yeah. I didn't know what else to do with my life, so I wrote a song. And the rest is history.
Nice.
I think I've been going for the nursery rhyme thing as well, as soon as he started replacing the words for Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars with I must go and do a poo. That's your first song, and then you go from there. Upward trajectory.
Pretty much the same for me. I think I remember being about 5 and doing the same kind of thing. So 35 years of debatably bad or good songs. It depends on who's listening.
Awesome, thank you. So where did your love of music come from? Where did this all start for you?
My brother was like 3 years older than me, and everything he did I had to do, which he hates, and I just, you know, it was something to do, was to be like him. So he got a guitar, I had to get a guitar. He wrote songs, he joined a band, he got a tattoo, I got 10,000. I drew the line at having children, though. He had a child, and I was like, I'll just pop in as auntie. But it was just really, I admired my brother, so I wanted to be like him, and he was the musician, so that's what I did.
Shout out to Doug May.
For me, I guess, like when I was young, around that same age, I remember how music would make me feel, and I loved music. It was like the best thing in the world. And driving down, I left Darwin. My mum and dad split up when I was young, and my mum and I left Darwin. And at the time, Yothu Yindi was like one of the biggest bands at that time in the early 90s, and they were like one of my favourite bands. And as we were travelling down from Darwin, we pulled up on the side of the road, and there was a cassette tape of Whitney Houston's The Bodyguard, like sitting on the side of the road. Don't know why. But that was we played it in the car all the way down from Darwin to Perth, and like I'll Always Love You was like the biggest hit song at that time in 91. And when I heard Whitney, I just decided then I'm going to be a singer. So I was really badly singing that song all the way down, but I guess I just kind of focused and got obsessed with music from that point. Yeah.
Which singer hasn't tried to bust that one out in their time?
It's that key change. The key change is the bit that gets everyone. So.
Mine was my dad. I grew up in a small country town, and you either play football or go to church, and my family went to church. So I grew up listening to my dad played keys in church every Sunday. My mum sang. So my house was full of music all the time. And but Dad also played in a rock band and loved Joe Cocker and Deep Purple. So I was firmly grounded in gospel and 70s rock. So yeah, that's where and Dad and I started a band called Three Bob, and we played covers around the wheat belt for a while, but then Dad died, so that finished up. But yeah, my parents.
Yeah, I think I went from my parents as well. The combination of Deep Purple and gospel music. You had a very organ-based genre. Yeah, it was definitely my dad who like introduced me to a lot of music, and that was just in the house the whole time. Elton John was the big thing everywhere, so music was our entire lives.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, big question, because we're all about songwriting. I'd love to know about your process, the songwriting process. How do you do this thing that you do? Some insights from each, because you're all quite, different artists, probably do things very differently. So I'd love to learn a bit about your songwriting process.
Yeah, so I started out writing songs on, from the very start. When I didn't play an instrument, I would get an instrumental. So back in the day, they used to release single CDs with, you get the track, the main track, and then you get an instrumental, then a remix. Some of you might not remember, some of you will. So I used to get a lot of those singles and used to write to the instrumental that was on those singles. And then it was at that time when I was 14, I got to, my dad introduced me to a producer, and I'd wrote this song to Gangsta's Paradise. And I came into the studio and just sang this song, and he recreated this whole new music around my melody and lyrics. So that's where that kind of like opened up my mind about music production. So then from there, I needed to study music to understand it more, because I wanted to write songs, and I wasn't skilled enough as a producer or composer. I didn't know anything about music. So I went to Abbe Music College, and I started picking up the guitar and the keyboards, and started to learn about structure, chords and music theory. And so from there, I would just sit with an instrument and just follow like the basic form, intro, verse, chorus, verse. I'd think about what I need to write about, and I think as I play the first couple of chords, I instantly start to hear a melody and feel what I'm going to be singing about. And usually I just kind of record that down on a voice memo or something. But nowadays, like now that I'm in full music production, running my own studio at home, I'm doing everything there within my session electronically. So sometimes I just play some chords and build a beat, music, and I just start recording and freestyling lyric and ideas. Sometimes I don't even write anymore. I just sing. So, and that it's a good way for me to like record as I write, because it's, everything's there. I always forget usually when I'm just writing with an instrument, but yeah.
Process. I'm a mum of 2 small humans, so I have so little time to do anything that songwriting is squeezed into the micro moments of my life, like sitting on the toilet, or that moment that you put your head on the pillow and you get an idea, but everything. So I carry a notebook with me everywhere, and any ideas that come into my foreground, I record them on my phone, and then at some stage during the month, I put aside a time. I might have a longer poo on the toilet, and I'll put all of that together into another notebook. So
what all together?
Not the poo.
Yeah, just checking.
So it's it's a process. But I have 3 different books. One of them is just spew forth brain fart. There's a lot of poo. I've got a 6-year-old. There's a lot of poo in my house.
How have I become the fart guy?
You were talking about poo before. Something about process. Train of thought. Process. Books. Yes, yeah. It's a distilling thing for me, like 3 different books, and they each become a little bit better as I go in the micro moments.
We've actually got a very similar kind of thing that we do with the band that follows kind of that process, but instead of books, we go from one person to the next. So if you've just got a jumble of like voice memos, which are just recordings, we'll send one of those out to our singer. He'll be like, I like that one. There we go. And then he'll track something back and then send through a bunch of stuff. and then our guitarist will kind of pick that together and be like, oh, okay, I think we can put a verse here and build a chorus to that. So like maybe in that way, like one of us is the first book, then he's the second book, and then Spark's the third one. Yeah.
Because are you all in different places as well?
Yeah, heaps
like,
different spaces.
yeah.
Really. Like I'm in Perth, Kenny's in Dunsborough, and Adam's in freaking New South Wales somewhere, I think. Yeah. So yeah. That's cool. Yeah, so it's a cool way of like doing that same process, but with dividing it into 3 people.
Well, I'm quite lazy. My nickname is, my friends call me Luxury Cat because I like to basically be horizontal most of the time, be it on a beach or on a couch or something. And so I have long periods of not writing music. And one of the things I say that's important for the process of songwriting is to not procrastinate. I know this because that's what I do. What's happened is I've had patches of songwriting over the last 20 years that have resulted in 5 records. And each time I've written a record, it's been different. This time I've kind of awoken from my laziness into a space where I want to have fun. And what I've noticed is fun is playing rock and roll with my band. And so my approach to writing is it fun to play? Like, is it challenging me to play? Does it feel and sound good? And that's pretty different to anything I've done before, because before it was like really angsty, like depressed lesbian stuff. And now it's like, woo, if I'm going to get up off the beach, I want to be having fun with a guitar. And that's genuinely where I'm at. Truth. I don't have children to blame for my laziness. I only have a cat. Highly recommend. Less poo by the sounds of it.
Wait, can I do a rewrite and remove the kid and go back to cat?
Absolutely.
I think that's illegal.
Just palm them off to the auntie for a couple of hours. We love it.
Sounds like a plan.
And with sometimes people need a songwriting space, and I guess, Dee, we've learnt about yours. Abbe, I guess, a big part of your writing, though, is removing yourself and going elsewhere, that you kind of touched on last night, to write. I don't know if that's a big part of writing your album. It's going away for a couple of months. Don't worry, nothing.
I was asleep last night.
Before that, the
Horizontal.
going away for a couple of months.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I basically live in Greece for 2 months of every year purely to be lazy. Oh, right. But this year I have a deadline. I'm 5 years late with an album, so because I've been going to Greece every year to lay down. I'm not making a joke. I know it's funny. I'm not lying. I'm the laziest person you will ever meet. And I forgot to have children. I'm 40. It's like I've been really busy laying down.
Right.
So, but this year I'm just happened to be spending 2 years in Greece, 2 months in Greece, like I said I would. And I have to write while I'm there because I'm late. So.
Oh, right, okay,
Yeah.
I got that confused.
Yeah.
I was thinking 2 months a year, you go to write an album, it's all,
I actually go to Greece to rescue cats, but that's a whole other panel discussion, isn't it?
Oh, okay.
I help
Back at
rescue.
6 o'clock for the cat rescuing panel.
My other passion is cats.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you for clearing that up. Okay, so delving into co-writing, because, and Glenn, you've touched on that with the band, and when you're co-writing with the band, that might be very different to if you have sessions set up just to write a track. And I don't know if you've all experienced that, co-writing sessions where it's like you just come together to write one song. I'd love to know about your co-writing experiences and how you tackle that, and if there's any preparation beforehand. Your experiences with co-writing, please.
I've only pretty much done co-writing because I'm like in a band, so everything is co-writing. You're sharing with your buddies all the time, which is amazing, but also incredibly frustrating. And like, because you need to listen to everyone's inane ideas which half the time are brilliant. Every time someone suggests something, the way they articulate it is like, oh, I wanted the drums to go, and you're like, oh, God, that sounds horrible. And then you actually hear the drummer do it, and it's wicked. So it's one of those ones I've got these three kind of mantras when I go into a writing session to be fearless, be open to everyone's suggestion, and be completely present. And with co-writing, I think in particular, that becomes very important. All those three elements tie in. They still apply to when you're writing by yourself, I guess. I just haven't done it for a long time. But yeah, I think just like when you're working with a team, it's just kind of being aware that you are kind of sharing a very delicate, creative kind of space with them and being open to that.
Do you folks write a lot of stuff and sort of throw away a lot of things?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of pretty heavily discarded kind of ideas on the floor that, that just don't make it through to the end of the kind of thing. But I think it's a good part of the process to have, to go through and just write as much as you can to get to the good stuff by going through the arguably bad stuff. But yeah, you're the poo guy.
Co-writing experiences from anyone else?
Yeah, well, I've co-written 2 albums with my other music partner, Christelle, the Marindas. It's weird seeing the face there. But we've been working together for the last 11 years, and at the beginning I always struggled with how to co-write in a room. But yeah, it is that matter of being open and considering all ideas, and but also working out who's doing what in the space as well. The way that Christelle and I work, I'm on the music side of things, so I will sit and create vibes, beats, just kind of different moods, and Christelle will sit with a notebook and she'll write the lyrics and melody as I'm creating the beat, and then every now and then if she's stuck, I'll kind of lean over and get her thinking more about the idea that's kind of forming in her mind, and sometimes chuck down some ideas with lyrics too, and vice versa. She might say, "No, I don't like that bass line. Can we find something a bit like this?" So we always sit and listen to music. So sometimes the writing session might just end up with half an hour listening to some tracks that we've been listening to for the last month, just to get some vibe of each other, what we like. And then, we just start demoing it down and just start creating on the spot. That's it.
Want me to go? Co-writing. I love co-writing because it can get really awkward, and I love that really awkward space with people because I feel like it's the really authentic kind of nitty-gritty cringe parts of people that you do have to be really careful, and it's a great space to be in with someone most of the time. Sometimes it's not, and it's something that you have to be really open-minded to when you go into the session, and also knowing who's taking what percentage at the end of the session. I think that's a really important conversation to have at the start of the session, because it can all go fairly pear-shaped. If you're a professional writer, you should have that conversation at the start, so everyone is on the same page. That's a good place to be. So I really like co-writing with other people.
I co-write for the last record and this record with a producer in Perth called Matt Geo, and I have really hounded him to work with me on this new record because I'm not that easy to work with, in that I'm not super productive until something happens at 1 a.m, and then I'll send 15 texts. But they're not, they're those people that send instead of 1 text, there's 200. And so Geo, I don't know, it doesn't bother him when I do that. So we have a personality thing that matches, but also we have this really strong mutual respect for each other. We're extremely different songwriters, but he has talents in that area that I do not have, and I've got something that he perhaps doesn't have in the way that I have it. So we work really well together. I haven't encountered it before. There's a supreme kind of mutual respect and also a friendship. Like, I really like him, but you know, because it's very hard to work with people that you don't like, even if they're really talented. It's just it's never good. It's really toxic. So my experience of co-writing has been the opposite of that, where I have had people I've written with whom I don't like at all, but they're talented, so you kind of have to go there. Whereas at the moment, the last 5 years I've been working with Matt Geo, and it's just, we're both very relaxed. We're not super focused on that idea of, there's some writers who go into it because they want world domination and they want all that. I literally just want to keep funding my lifestyle, but I also have catharsis that I need to execute. And Matt Geo seems to have the same priorities as me. He just also has kids, so he's got that to fund rather than a cat to feed and a lounge to lie on.
It is such a personal space, isn't it? Like allowing someone into your writing space and not being too precious about your work when, you know, like you're working with someone. I find that it can be...
It's very vulnerable.
Thank you, yes. It is a vulnerable space.
See? Co-writing.
50-50.
50-50.
Perfect, because my next question, I wanted it to be on songwriting splits and percentages, which Dee you brought up, and and how you go about that.
I go 50-50 now. I didn't used to. I used to actually say to co-writers, tell me what you want and you can have it, because they will always ask for less than what I thought they probably were going to ask for. But now I just kind of go, I want it to be, who knows if the small bass part that they wrote is someone's favourite part of the song. Like at the moment I'm writing full songs, bringing them into Matt Geo, and he's then helping me to flesh them out. But I think that his production is such a huge part of what makes the song beautiful. And someone might just love the way a drum is recorded and listen to it because of that, and it generates income. So I just think it's hard to work out. I think once you remove ego from it, it's a really good thing to create like an egalitarian system. Go 50-50, or what do they call it, the Nashville split? It's just easier. It's kinder too, I think.
Yep, same.
Yeah, same. Absolutely same. Across the board. Simple.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort for everyone to get into the room. Like, you know, like if everyone's on the same page and you're all doing a thing, like, I think, it makes sense, doesn't it?
This is why it's important, I think, to work with people you like, because it's really hard to be generous to people who are really not, you know, decent. I find it, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just really spiteful. I think when you work with people who are genuinely talented and you respect and they respect you, it's like really easy to just not bother with that kind of stuff, you know.
But how do you actually address that then? Because you all do it, but...
It's a convo you should have early, like, so before you go into the session. So there are other people who don't work like that and they prefer to divide things by, okay, I've written the chords and I've written the melodies, and that's understandable as well. But I think you just should have that discussion before you're going into the session, so everyone, like you said, the most important thing is to be on the same page. So like my preference to work is that everyone gets an even split, but if I'm working with someone who just doesn't work like that, then as long as you're understanding that before you're like halfway through a process and you're trying to work out what the value of an A flat chord versus a C minor chord is, I think that's the key to that.
Yeah, direct conversation at the start of the process is how it should go. And openness to it changing if it does need to, but I don't know, there's a lot of... I guess now it's a bit easier too, considering it's really hard to make any money off of publishing. But it's like, here's your 30 cents.
That's why we're all cool with 50-50, because it's like, it's an even split. It's like,
It's very true.
I'll get you another coffee halfway through.
It's on me.
My next question was about publishing. So for those who aren't aware, you can self-publish your music. You write it, you put it out there, and try to get that used as much as possible, your song, and collect the income as much as possible. At some point down the line, you might end up working with a publisher. They might approach you, you might approach them. Some of our panel, I'm not sure if all, but at least some have some experience with music publishing. So I'd love to know how that came about, how those deals came about, and what it's actually meant for you, how it's affected your songwriting, if it has.
I've got a tale of woe for you.
Please.
I signed to Albert's Publishing in 2012, I think, and I signed to them deliberately. I had some pretty big, really big labels that were interested, and I signed deliberately to Albert's because they're a small-ish company. I also took a small-ish advance because I didn't want to be stuck in a position where maybe I was going to have to be paying this off for the rest of my career if it all went tits up. And then Albert sold everything on their catalogue except AC/DC to BMG. And so I went from being on a label that had maybe 30 artists, something like that, to a label that has thousands of artists. And BMG are still good, and I still love Albert's, even though I miss them. And BMG, certainly a big label, can have its benefits, but I prefer to stay in a smaller boutique label. So in the end, I was so sort of unhappy with it that I had to buy my way out of the contract, which was about $25,000, which is a smallish but still an album budget. So it's partly why it's taken 5 years to get out, but I know that was the right thing to do. So now I own everything that I release, and I think in about 2 years I get my catalogue back from Albert's. So it's a kind of a cautionary tale to keep your publishing advance. If I had taken $100,000, I would still be stuck with a partnership that I don't want to be with. And again, no diss on BMG, it just isn't what I want to do with my publishing career. So I've found it is pretty important to kind of read the fine print in contracts. I kind of missed the bit where they were like, we can sell you if we want. It's fairly standard practice for a company to be able to do that. So, even if you kind of really do want to just stick with a small little family-run business, you can still end up with a massive multinational publisher. I guess you've just got to be all right with that, but also have exit strategies as well. So publishing, I think can be good. Maybe I should have taken the big contract. That'd still be... I would have spent it all by now.
Yeah. And so your publishing was for your entire catalogue?
It was for my entire catalogue and one new album with the option to buy my way out if I needed to. But I was very lucky that I had that kind of money at the time, but it wasn't an easy feat. That was my budget to record, but I thought that was more important. Then it's just so easy to get swallowed by a big company. So they can sit. Again, I'm not saying that this is what BMG did, but I know that with large companies, they can sit on a dormant catalogue and make quite a bit of money off of you passively. And I want a smaller company because I feel like they are more active in working for your money, like making you money, which I'd found with two smaller labels before. So I think that was my cautionary tale because I was pretty lucky to get out. Publishing is pretty important. You want someone to actively be seeking you opportunities, and love you, BMG. We just broke up. Yeah.
We just the Mirandas we basically just wanted to get publishing so our music can get on film and TV. So our manager reached out to Gaga Music in Melbourne, and they're really great. They're small publishing as well, and they've been really great. They pitch ideas to us like, hey, do you want to do a remix of this, and we'll pitch it for the footy or something, or there's been a few jobs that have come up to create some music for adverts, but as well as, especially through COVID when we had no gigs, they worked really hard to get some, some sync stuff happening with our music, and so we got quite a bit of money over those 2 years sitting down doing nothing. And yeah, they've been pretty proactive and supportive, and constantly sit down with us often and have a meeting, and it's been super cool with them.
And were most of those things for adverts or?
Yeah, like TV shows, talk shows, like TV series for ABC, SBS, and and it feels like a gig, like it's good when your money can just generate a pretty much equivalent of a gig fee and you don't have to do anything. I mean, we've found that really positive. Yeah, helpful.
I have the last album is with a publisher, but nothing's come of it. And I'd tell them to work a bit harder. Yeah.
Which, look, could happen. They might be pitching your stuff to things, and it's part of the.
That's right.
What's
part
going
of
into the mix.
The world of music. Just keep throwing spaghetti at the wall. One day something will stick.
I've been pretty lucky. I don't really know too much about my publishing. I'm with Mushroom, and they've been great. I think we get played on Neighbours and Home and Away a fair bit, and they got us to play at the grand final, as best I can tell. They were involved in the... But yeah, I've just realised from hearing you talk that I know very little about how publishing works.
You're living in a paradise, my friend.
Yeah, apparently. I think my manager kind of looks after it. I've got no idea what's going on. I don't actually... I think they could. So yeah, thumbs up from them, thumbs up from me. Sure.
Abbe, you had some good some success with your publisher though, right? You've had some really good things come of that.
Yeah, I still make quite a bit of money from publishing. My songs are often used in advertising and stuff, and since I've paid off the publishing, now I get all the money and I'm like, wee. But prior to that, my first big strike with publishing was back in the days when it was quite lucrative. Instead of getting a couple $1,000s, it was, and these were the base rates as well, about $15,000 a side. So you'd have the publishing and the mechanical sides for the use of your song for 30 seconds in a Jägermeister ad, and at the end of the Entourage episode. And so that was $30,000 for the two. So over the course of that release with a small label, we pulled in just under $100,000 of publishing. Of course, I think about 50% of that goes to the publisher, but they actively got those. I remember they did it a lot. They invested a little bit of money and they actively created those opportunities for us. So, you can get sounds like you've got really good publishing, and when they're active and really passionate about their artists, it's fantastic. When it gets multinational level, I think you want to be kind of maybe at Birds of Tokyo level, where you're actually selling lots and lots and lots of records, because that's when they start, those big companies are very interested because you're very, very lucrative. For maybe someone a bit more niche like me, which is depressed lesbian blues, really, really dying to get my music on the L word, by the way. Just putting it out there, universe. It's, smaller companies I think are really good. They're good little stepping stone, and, I think until you start selling enormous amounts of records, that's what the big companies are good for. But yeah, it's possible to have success without that too. There is good money in it. It's less and less now though. From that talk we were at, I can't remember what the publisher was saying about why there's less money in the...
He did mention the production companies, the library music companies as well, that people can go to acquire some music that has been specifically kind of pre-written for various purposes, and then if people want a piece of music for their show or TV show, film or something like that, they can go there and get some music that's maybe been written in a certain genre. It's been pre-cleared, and it's probably a lot cheaper than getting, an original particular artist song or something that you'd want. So instead of, getting an Abbe made, just look up something in a similar style and it might be a whole lot cheaper.
I encourage this. Use my cover version of Genuine's Pony because I make lots of money off of that. So I'm like, you don't need Genuine, just use mine. It's, covers are actually pretty lucrative. I think that's less, you don't get the publishing side of it, you get like the mechanical side or something, and then I don't know. Did you just go blank? You're like,
So,
and then what happens when AI,
let's not go there, Dee. We've only got we've got minutes. Let's not open that one up. Good question though. It's a great question. Let's talk about that one over the networking at the drinks. I wanted to ask a question about, and I want to mention it because it's something that people could perhaps follow up with, looking online. Is a song ever finished, or how long do you take to finish your songs? And I'm mentioning that because a chap in Bulla or Perth, Timothy Nelson, is doing a project at the moment, writing and releasing a song a week. So for something, you wanted to look up, you could look him up, Timothy Nelson, and watch, because he talks about his process. And, you can kind of see that from the start to release in the span of a week. Is that something does that terrify you?
Sounds like pure hell to me. Does that not sound awful to you?
It's maybe not your vibe.
He's doing a great job of it, and I think Timothy's incredible, but it's like, oh my God. Does he get time to shit? That's what I want to know. The guy's like, I might ask him that.
But if you wrote something, Abbe, and then, put it out there, or do you really like to spend some time with this?
5 years minimum.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I do like to make sure that it's as good as possible before I go crazy, but at the same time, it's like I'm really impressed with what Timothy's done because they're really high quality songs. I don't know how he's doing it. He's still got a full head of hair and an impressive head of hair at the same time. I couldn't do it. I think I could write a song a week, but it wouldn't be good. And so he's impressed me with that. But I wouldn't recommend it. I can't imagine it being for every artist. Good. Oh.
I love the idea. If I had the time, I'd love it. I think it's brilliant. I wrote this down as a quote by Andy Warhol, because I think it's really important. Don't think about making art, just get it done. Let everyone else decide if it's good or bad, whether they love it or they hate it. While they're deciding, make even more art. Andy Warhol. It's
the worst advice I've ever heard.
Throw spaghetti out the wall and just see what sticks. And just keep failing forward. Yeah, so good.
That's the thing. It's like everyone has a different process, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I might ask one more question before throwing it out to the audience. Just about some tips, like if you experience writer's block, it's all a bit of a, we go through waves of perhaps writing a lot and then maybe not at all. And you might have along your journey picked up some good hints and tips and tools for writing songs, getting out of writer's block, or just how to kick off the day with writing. So if you've got any hints for people, I'd love to hear them.
Well, you get angry with your bandmates and you blame them for all the failures of that song. You guys, I think writer's block is one of those things that's just part of the process. As you're moving along, at some point you're going to hit a hurdle. It's not always going to be smooth sailing, but that is part of it, and you kind of learn to enjoy that more than trying to figure out how to eliminate writer's block. There's no real way around it. I kind of shift into a different instrument. So I'll move from piano to guitar. I'll focus on something else of it. But I think as long as you're still moving in the direction of creating stuff, you don't actually need to remove the writer's block. You can kind of just continue to work around it.
Okay, that's a good tip though, changing instruments, because, you pick up a different instrument and it does have a different feel.
Yeah.
Great tip, thank you.
For me, I just kind of break everything down into sections and know that this day all I have to do is make sure that I create a chord progression, and then the next day I might come back the words won't come, but I might just be like, it's just gibberish. So then I'll just like, I have a lot of recordings of me just singing gibberish melodies, and then I might come back and then I'll just start slotting in words like lyrics to that gibberish. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the day working on a beat. So I just kind of just move through it and break it down in sections. So I used to try and approach and write everything at once, and yeah. But it's also good to have a vision about what you want to write, and it's good to have a story as well. For like, what is your story from start to finish, and tell your story in the verses, and kind of that conclusion of what that is your chorus, and your chorus always has to be like just simple, not too wordy, but yeah.
I think if I get stuck, I'd like to remove myself from the space. So going for a walk, or putting my feet in the sand, or I like to see the horizon. I think that always gives me a bit of perspective. That's helpful to me. Also, fresh oxygen in your body, brain. It's good.
I'm in a space with it where I'm like quite all right with spending 5 years not writing stuff, and, because I was very prolific in my 20s, and I got really stressed, and then I was like, let's throw a nervous breakdown into the mix, along with the nervous breakdown haircut that accompanies that type of malarkey. I was carrying on like a pork chop, and I think there is such a thing as toxic productivity, and as I found, you can go way too far the other way. But I think, I'm not just a songwriter, I'm also a mother to a cat. I like painting. I'm not very good at it, but I do it. I also am quite, I have athletic pursuits. I have spiritual pursuits. I'm a daughter, a sister. I'm all different types of things. And songwriting for me is probably the thing I am best at of all of those things. But it's not my number one thing that I do all the time. So I'm quite happy to have writer's block when it comes. I feel like it gives me a chance to, go and run a marathon or do something different with the talents that I have that aren't specifically musical. And I'm much happier because of it. Look at me, I'm a glowing example of contentedness.
Thank you. And I don't know if this might come up in people's writing sessions, but, if you wanted some things to go away and think about, perhaps you could look up free writing or object writing. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder from their workshops, but there are a couple of things that you could look up, and that could get you started with some stuff, free writing or object writing. If it doesn't come up for you, we can chat about it in the networking session, and even throwing out, because often writers, they might have a bit of a chord progression that they stick to, or a sort of style, so maybe just throwing it out there and thinking of 3 or 4 chords, just naming them and just starting with that, pluck some chords out of the air, whether you play guitar or piano or some notes or something like that, and just play around with it. But we can chat about some more different ideas just to get you going if you do get a little bit stuck. But I might move into, if there are any audience questions, we do have a microphone that can float around. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask our fabulous panel? Yes, over far side. Thanks, Kristen.
Sorry, I am speaking as a teenager, but would you say that social media has influenced you in a way, or experienced any online trolls at all?
I wrote a song about Instagram, or a line about it, but that's just because I like Instagram, so I'm on it quite a bit. But I don't know, I think I was born in the wrong era to work out TikTok. So I think but I know that TikTok has really influenced a lot of songwriters in this new wave, because there's horror stories of, record labels and things having clauses in the contracts about when songs can be released based on how viral the artist can get on things like TikTok. So I think the social media influence largely is really, really bad on the songwriting craft, because it sort of Have you heard of that viral stuff with the... I wouldn't know what viral means. Have you heard of that viral stuff in the contracts with around specifically TikTok? There's quite a lot of it. And
your release gets delayed based upon when it's going to go out.
So it's really a pervasive influence, and I personally think it's bad. I don't mean to come across like a Luddite, but I think that this is not a good thing. To make the value of a song and the importance of its release hinge upon how popular a viral skit relating to that song can be, I think that's pretty weird to me. I don't like it.
I haven't had any trolls, but no. Is that the question? No trolls.
There was trolls before, like TikTok, and I used to scroll down YouTube to see our live performances, and it's like the keyboard player didn't sing the backing vocals, and googling trying to figure out where this guy's house is. So I took the trolls very seriously when I was younger. Now it's just like water off a duck's back.
You get different types of people on different platforms. I found Facebook I'm a little bit more reserved. I post a lot of memes on my music pages because I clearly do not care about anything anymore. But I kind of post a lot of memes because I like memes. They make me laugh. And at this point, any boost to my serotonin levels is welcome. But I can't post the same type of memes that I post on Instagram that I do to Facebook, because Facebook, I get a lot of people taking the memes seriously. And then sometimes, because it's so open, you get all these Donald Trump supporters suddenly flooding the page, and then you get all the weird death threats and things over a meme that one was about Pink Floyd. But I do find social media is one of those places that if you can sort of take it with a grain of salt and then focus on what really matters, which is, I would say, your friendships and your creative catharsis through songwriting, then, I think you'll outlive the weird invasion of social media influence. And you know what? If someone trolls you, send them to me.
Auntie Abbe will sort it out.
Do we have one more question from anyone? Excellent. This will be the last one, I'm afraid.
I'll just keep it nice and simple then. I like hearing people's inspirations and whatnot, and I know you said the Bodyguard soundtrack and stuff, so I'd just like to know, sort of growing up, who your main inspirations were, be it a musician or an album or both? Or?
Weezer Blue Album.
That's the Buddy Holly lick.
Buddy Holly, the break in Buddy Holly, that's the only song you need to know. That's songwriting done. Blue Album, that's it.
Definitely Aretha Franklin, Pink Cadillac, waking up really late at night. My mum was up still watching Rage, and I was allowed to sit with her, and just seeing the delight she had when she saw that film clip come on, and realising that this was an artist to admire, and really taking that on for my mother. And then just, of course, the voice, the song, that's the first influence I had, really. I mean, she's the best. She's the GOAT.
Procol Harum, Whiter Shade of Pale, B3, Leslie, organ. Oh. Amazing.
I think I'm just inspired by what my mum would always play, and the main core albums that we had were Aretha Franklin, Fleetwood Mac, Sade, and a lot of 90s R&B.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of this session, folks. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to our fabulous speakers.